Welcome to GW Integrative Medicine, the podcast about disease prevention and health promotion from the Office of Integrative Medicine and Health at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. I'm Dr. Lee Frame, Director of the GW Integrative Medicine Programs and Executive Director of the office. Today we're going to talk about Moringa with Dr. Jed Fahey, former Director of the Cullman Chemoprotection Center at Johns Hopkins University, and Lisa Curtis, Founder and CEO of Kuli Kuli Foods. A nutritional biochemist and leader in chemoprotection, Dr. Fahey has broad training and extensive background in plant physiology, human nutrition, phytochemistry, and nutritional biochemistry. Many of these studies deal with cruciferous vegetables and Moringa oleifera. Lisa is a social entrepreneur whose company, Kuli Kuli Foods, includes a team of entrepreneurs, product developers, and change makers who are improving lives through sustainable nutrition and livelihood for women and farmers in the developing world using the Moringa plant. Welcome to GW Integrative Medicine, Jed and Lisa.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we should probably start with the basics. What is Moringa? Maybe, Lisa, you can give us a friendly intro, and Jed, maybe you can give us some botany after that.
Yeah, I'll give you the less scientific version. So Moringa is a tree that grows all over the tropics, and it's actually the leaves of the tree that many people talk about, but all parts of the tree are edible. So it's an amazing plant, and I think the way that I often tell people to think about it is it tastes kind of like matcha, has kind of a green, earthy flavor, but is even more powerful than kale, more nutrient dense, and has some incredible phytonutrients similar to turmeric or other superfoods that you might heard of.
So I guess you want the more botanical take from me, but I'd like you. So I'll give you one, but I'd like you to revert to Lisa and ask about some of her experiences with it when she was in the Peace Corps and sort of how she got interested in it or introduced to it. But from a botanical perspective, it's a sort of isolated genus. There are 13 species in the genus that comprises Moringa, meaning botanically it's a sort of small group, but it's very closely related phytochemically and to a degree botanically to the cruciferous vegetables, the brassica vegetables, the cole crops that everybody's familiar with because you eat them if you eat vegetables, probably things like broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, cabbage, stuff like that, cauliflower. So I got interested in it from the perspective of its phytochemicals, which are closely related to those cruciferous that I've studied for a long time, as you know, Lee. Mm-hmm. But so the other thing that I'd just add to what Lisa said before you turn back to her is that although most people, certainly the vast majority of people, eat Moringa leaves, especially in places like India, there are a lot of people who also eat the pods and the seeds and the immature pods. And it's a very, again, sort of from a botanical perspective, people in the temperate zones like the U.S. are familiar with trees like the honey locust, the locust tree, and you see all those long beans or pods hanging down from it, and the little sort of penny-shaped round leaves. Moringa looks a lot like a sort of chaotic version of that, of a locust tree. And so it is, people do eat the pods and the seeds, and they also eat they've used all parts of the plant. The trees are used for their wood. They're used to make fence posts and things like that. So but you should hear a little bit more from Lisa about sort of where the metal meets the pedal, or the pedal meets, or the tires meet the road in the tropics, because she spent a lot of time with Moringa there.
Yeah, absolutely, Lisa. Please tell us about that, because I can't imagine how you would have run across this plant. We certainly don't talk about it much in the States.
Yeah, so I had never heard of it up until a little over 10 years ago. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Niger, West Africa, and was placed in a really rural village. You know, you can just imagine no electricity, no running water, no Whole Foods down the street. And I'm a vegetarian and just felt like I wasn't getting the right nutrients in my diet. I was, kind of mostly eating rice every day. And volunteering at the village's health center and asked some folks, what can I eat that will make me feel better, give me more energy? And they literally pulled these leaves off a tree and mixed them into a popular local snack called Kuli Kuli and said, this Kuli Kuli Moringa is going to change your life. It's going to make you feel so much better. And I was like, I don't know about that, but I'll try everything. I'll try anything at this point, even tree leaves. So long story short, started eating it and just found it had a tremendous impact on my health. I think gave me the protein, the iron, the calcium, kind of everything my body needed to feel good and feel more energized. And as I looked around the village that I was in, I was like, why aren't more people here eating it? They're literally feeding it to their goats. And so they started telling me, it's kind of, it basically, Moringa's like kale 10 years ago in the US. It was this, backyard weed, kind of bitter, like not something that people really wanted to eat. And I kept asking, well, what can we do to get more people to grow it and use it? And they said, well, why don't you help us sell it? Because if we're selling it, then, everybody will think that there's value in this plant and that'll help us earn an income and help us grow more of it. And it'll kind of create this good cycle. So, I was 23 at the time, had no idea what I was signing up for, but like, sure, yeah, I'll help you sell it in the US, no problem. So got back to the US and started Kuli Kuli Foods. And it's been a journey, let me tell you, but we now sell Moringa powders and other superfood powders as well, all sustainably sourced directly from small farmers. And we're in 11,000 stores, so everywhere from Whole Foods to Walmart. So we've gotten Moringa actually on Whole Foods' trend
Walmart,
list.
that's impressive.
2 years. Yeah, no, Walmart, it does really well there too. So I think even though it's not familiar to a lot of Americans, because it has such importance in like Ayurvedic medicine, where it's really well known, as Jed mentioned, all over India, you can see folks eating the seed pods. They actually call Moringa the drumstick tree. In the Philippines, Moringa is the national vegetable. They call it malunggay. All over Central and South America, there's this big focus on Moringa as something that people use for weight management and help to work with natural diabetes. And then all over Africa, you hear it called like the tree of life or mother's milk because it's used for lactation. So long story short, we find it resonates in places you might not expect because so many people have these cultural ties to this amazing plant.
So it sounds like it has a long tradition of being used. What types of conditions is it used for?
Yeah, that's where I think, Jed, it can give you some pretty amazing science. I will say from a cultural tradition perspective, a lot of the things that we hear from our supplier partners is that they will use it from everything from I have a cough, I'm going to start dousing myself with Moringa to, we've even had folks tell us that they use it as part of their HIV treatment or cancer treatments or for more serious diseases. So it is something that I think is just seen as this all around superpower plant.
So yeah, that's a good sort of segue to something I think is important to fill people in on. But let me take one step back and say that I think one of the benefits that's sort of attracted me to Moringa for its value in the tropics is that the leaves, once dried, the leaves store beautifully, and because these trees are drought resistant, leaves are available really when everything else is dried up and very, very few other things are available. So especially if the leaves are properly dried and stored. So in the tropics, I think it's got great value. It was in some places it's seen as a famine food, although in others it's just eaten regularly. That sort of loses its importance when you transfer your focus to the United States or to more temperate climes. So, obviously, Lisa's company is selling primarily dried, powdered dried leaves, and they have that, and it's available year round here. But in the tropics, I think this sort of availability is really important when you are talking about its nutritional properties. So, in terms of some of the science, I think you have to separate the way you look at the science on moringa into two pieces. One is the fact that one is nutritional and one is medicinal. So from a nutritional perspective, it's a highly digestible protein source, comparable to the FAO's sort of standards. Comparable to milk and eggs in terms of protein digestibility and quality. It's not something that I think most people, especially in the West, would make a major part of their diet, but use as a supplement. But they use as a supplement. I think, Lisa, please tell us. I think that's true in West Africa and other places in the tropic too, right? You wouldn't make a meal of it, but you would use it as a complement or a supplement.
Yeah, I think we often find folks will add the leaves into their sauces and make, in Niger where I was living, they call it this leaf sauce. And in India, I know it's used a lot in sambar and in curries, both in the drumstick, and you can sometimes find it in the leaf form as well. So yeah, it's not necessarily the primary food, but I think adds a really powerful nutritional and, also phytonutrient boost to whatever you're making.
Yeah. So the second part of the answer then is the phytonutrient, and we can talk about its role as a medicinal, or its phytonutrients, its phytochemicals, its bioactives. We can use whatever terminology we prefer, but basically that's where having a relatively to a bowl full of rice, let's say, a relatively small amount of the plant can have really huge outsized effects, because it is effective in various systems, in various trials, in various experimental systems, and in clinical studies. In some of these cases, it's effective as an anti-inflammatory, as an antioxidant, as a cytoprotectant, meaning protecting the cells, as an antibiotic, as an antiviral, as a cancer preventive, as an anti-diabetic, and as an antihypertensive. Now, that sounds like a long list, but as Lisa said, yeah, but as Lisa said, the whole list, I've done a few reviews on the sort of the medicinal qualities of moringa. The whole list, if you go to the traditional literature, is something like 300 or so claims. So clearly, when modern science or any science takes a close look, not all those claims will hold up. But the ones that I mentioned I mentioned because they're the subject of already of a lot of research, both in the lab, in vitro, in animal studies, and again, in many cases in studies with people. I've sort of singled out over the last 5 or 10 years the anti-diabetic properties, because I've talked to West African doctors who have just sung its praises and had patients who were on medication but couldn't really afford it for diabetes and got off the meds when they started taking moringa. So there's mechanistic data, there's mechanistic work, there's animal model data, and there are, I don't know what the current count is, I think somewhere close to 10 clinical studies that have been done with various degrees of success and various degrees of rigor. And they're not all wonderful clinical studies, but that have examined its anti-diabetic properties. So when you look at the scale of diabetes worldwide, I mean, that's a major plus right there. I think,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Lisa also used the word superfood, which she and I tangled about early on in our relationship. It's a word that I used to hate, the word superfood, talking about moringa or kale or whatever you choose. I've grown to accept it. I even used it in a few scientific publications because it's a word that customers, consumers, the lay public digs. I mean, they use that word, so it doesn't matter in a lot of cases what a scientist wants to call something. If the people the scientists are trying to reach have a different opinion, sooner or later you have to bend a little bit. Lisa, we made peace on that, right?
So. We did. I mean, I think at the end of the day, folks get confused when you try to say this is a medicinal plant and highly nutritional and does these 20 different things. And I think what resonates with folks the most is this idea of like, oh, this is a superfood, more powerful than kale. Like that line alone often is enough that people are like, oh, that looks interesting. And if they want sort of the research and all of that, we have it and are happy to provide it. But often they just want somebody to tell them like, okay, well, what is it? Is it good for you? Does it do good things for you? So we like superfood.
It actually makes a lot of sense because it's simple. And a lot of times simple things are what people will hear, right? Like you're getting them to be able to hear it, and then it's something that they actually can understand.
So, Lee, I was going to ask you, I mean, you're a scientist. Do you have a position on superfood? And I guess you do. So
I do. Okay. I feel like I'm still leaning in the anti-camp, but for a different reason, perhaps. I feel like the issue I have with the term superfood is that it makes other foods seem less than. And I feel like we still want you eating all the other vegetables and fruit and whole grains and nuts and beans. You can't have a diet on only moringa, which I feel like we've made pretty clear already, actually, right? This is not the only thing you're going to eat. And this and goji berries is also not enough in a diet. You need this diversity of diet.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
For me, the way that I think about superfood is a product you are consuming for benefits beyond just the like sort of face value taste and nutrition. You're consuming it for, some of these like medicinal properties. So that's how I think about it. I think everybody has a different definition, and people put a lot of different plants in the superfood category, but I think moringa certainly does deserve to be there.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds, when you list all the things that it's been used for historically, and then you start looking into the literature, there's clearly something special about this food.
There is.
We would agree. Yeah.
So one of the things that when we hear about these superfoods that also gets me concerned is then you start seeing products cropping up everywhere, and we're just like, throwing things in randomly, and whether it's any quality or there's enough in it is really a concern. So how do people find moringa that will actually provide the health benefits that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There is no standardization for superfoods. Like there's no regulatory agency saying, yes, this checks all the boxes for what moringa should be. There's, no real definition of like what moringa powder should and should not have in it. And I think it can be tricky because we get this question all the time of like, hey, I can buy a $9 bag of moringa on Amazon, and how come yours is $19.99? And often what we tell folks is that it takes money to make something of quality, and we're really careful both in the soil where the moringa is grown. We make sure there's no heavy metals, toxins in the soil because, moringa is a bioaccumulator. It'll take all that stuff from the soil and take it up into the leaves. We're very careful on how it's processed, that it's processed, in a really clean way that, gets rid of any of the bad micro stuff, but keeps the really good nutrition. So we're not just heating it up and killing all the actives in there. And so we've been working, doing this for over a decade now, partnering directly with small farmers, helping them to grow and process moringa that meets the absolute highest quality standards. And I think folks can taste and tell a difference when they have our moringa, but unfortunately there's not always a good way to communicate that when people are just, shopping online or rushing through a store. So it's something we struggle with a lot.
So you mentioned the quality of preparation or harvest and preparation. Lee, I think your viewers could, or your listeners, could probably relate to, if you envision a bunch of moringa leaves harvested off a plant wherever they may be grown, dried gently under a shade cloth, where you don't have a whole bunch of bugs and animals and so on and dust contaminating the product, versus harvested in an unclean area and dried in a kiln or an oven just to get it done fast. Mm-hmm. And you lose so many phytochemicals when you do things like that. One of the things obviously that Kuli Kuli does is pay close attention to the whatever microbes may be on their leaves, and they only accept clean product. But there are all sorts of opportunities for shady operators to just unload just crap onto the market. And I've seen that. It has nothing to do with my relationship with Kuli Kuli. I've seen that in stores. I've seen it in high-end groceries, high-end stores like Whole Foods, but I won't call them out. I won't single them out. But a local store and you look at the moringa that they do have, if they have any, and some of it looks sort of bleached and just really anemic. It's lost a lot of its green. So right there is a clue that product is not something I would want to eat. So anyway, there are a lot of details to sourcing and producing and consistently high quality product. And I think knowing your growers and who you're buying it from is critical, which I know Kuli Kuli does. And that's one of the things that attracted me to them as an advisor in the first place. A long time
that makes
ago.
A lot of sense. And particularly with just nutrition and supplements generally, this is like a classic story, right? And if we're taking something to improve our health, we certainly don't want to have things like heavy metals in it, because then we're probably actually hurting our health in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, don't get me started with the supplement business, but that's like a game of whack-a-mole, because it doesn't take much money to start up a company to put some kind of powder in a gel cap and put it in a bottle. It's pretty minimal investment. And, you put something lousy out and people get sick or get hurt or don't get any benefit, or you run afoul of the FTC and the FDA on your labeling, well, you go bye-bye and start up with another company name. Right. So, this is a formula that the supplement companies have used, unfortunately, many times. And, I'm afraid people really suffer from it. They don't get the benefit they'd like to get, but there may be people that really have suffered from that, from these indiscriminate fly-by-night companies.
Yeah, agreed. And the other thing that I'm hearing that I know is going to resonate with our listeners is the fair trade that is going on here, and the care for the individuals who are involved in this throughout the pipeline, because there's a lot of exploitation, particularly when we talk about taking a plant from a lesser developed nation, right? Be that coffee or chocolate or moringa.
Yeah, no, that's a key part of it. Obviously, starting this out with Peace Corps, kind of being who I am, but also who our team is made up of. Like that's why we're here. We're not here to just sell a product. Our goal is to really support small farmers, and we see ourselves as being equal partners. They're amazing at growing this plant, at harvesting it, at hitting all these quality specs, and our job is to help them access the U.S. market and sell it here and tell the story of what they're doing. So we have about 3,000 folks that we're partnered with through all of the farmers resources, folks who are processing the moringa, and we're sourcing from very rural parts of the world. Places like Mahindi, Uganda, where it's a 10-hour bus ride from the capital, or other spots like that where there's not a lot of other opportunity, and so it really does help our farmer partners to be able to sell a product in the U.S. and it helps them to be able to do things like send their kids to school or provide better nutrition, and we also do small community projects with our suppliers like Moringa in their morning porridges at schools, or agroforestry projects to grow other crops alongside Moringa. So it's a kind of a whole host of community involvement that we're a part of.
Absolutely. So now I'm wondering about, if you're a healthcare provider, what do you need to know about Moringa? Jed, what is the number one thing that you think healthcare providers need to know about this, and perhaps if they want to use it in their patient population?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I mean, you're sort of asking me to go back to the list of sort of scientific highlights that I gave you, but I think, I mean, the nutritional benefit we talked about a little bit, and I think there's some things we didn't mention, like the sort of non-caffeine energy boosting benefit, which is frankly not proven in clinical studies, but is anecdotally all over the place. I mean, people talk about that energy boost. So it's certainly something actually that Lisa and I have been trying to get a clinical trial done on, but hasn't happened yet. But I think for clinicians, probably, well, it's all over the place. I mean, so let's just take three areas that I think are very exciting for future discoveries and research with Moringa, but that a clinician could really engage in or engage with without anything further. One is its properties as a galactagogue, or a lactation enhancing agent. And Lisa, you can speak more to this than I can, because I know you piped into that network. Well,
we have piped into the network, and I also have an 8-month-old at home, so I feel it every day, and it is remarkable. Let me tell you, from just days when I dump a bunch of moringa in my morning oatmeal and have a afternoon moringa latte, get a lot more milk, and we hear this all the time from a network of doulas and moms that use our product for that. So it is pretty powerful.
And there are clinical studies. There's clinical work that's been done on those properties. In fact, there's one going on now in it's in Kenya or Uganda. I can't remember. But so these properties are not. This is not just anecdotes. This is not just people. This is actually. I should point out, this is measurable, whereas the energy effect isn't that measurable, or is hard to measure, hard to quantify. The lactation enhancement effect has been measured, and some of the recent non-published clinical data that I've seen is an almost doubling in milk volume, and this again was in Africa.
Works in America too.
Where's that? In America?
Oh, no, I just saying it works in America too.
Yeah. So, okay, Lee, to address your question, that's certainly one area where a practitioner could make some recommendations. Try it and see how it works. Test it for yourself. There's certainly no toxicity or overdose issue with Moringa whatsoever, I would say. And I say no overdose issue because I go back to, I used to get asked this all the time before I really became very acquainted with Moringa when I was working with broccoli, and people would say, well, especially, it might take a serving or two of broccoli to have an effect. How can I make sure I'm not overdosing? And my response always was, look, you start eating a plate full of broccoli with every meal, and your body is just going to say, forget about it, and you're not going to go there. I think it's the same with Moringa, but with dried leaf powder, it's the tolerance, the personal tolerance will obviously be less than a plate full. But you try it. You try a teaspoonful or a tablespoonful or a couple of them in whatever vehicle, whether it be oatmeal or various other dishes. And Lisa and many others have all sorts of recipes they can share and see if it works for yourself. The second area, I think, is the anti-diabetic indication. And again, with so many people, at least people of means in the Western world, using continuous blood sugar monitors. This, especially with people with prediabetes or people who've been diagnosed with diabetes and are not yet put on any meds. This is so easy to do clinician-guided self testing. You eat and you observe. You monitor blood sugar if you've got a continuous blood sugar monitor, or if you're doing finger sticks, you see what it does to your energy level, to your blood sugar. And the third area that I would point out is one that's far, far more difficult to, I think, get the heads of clinicians around, but that's the antiviral effect. And it's a far more serious, it's not more serious, but it's an area that's more fraught with problems, because most people that are HIV infected, for example, or have other viral infections, are on some sort of an antiviral. But there are a number of quite remarkable stories about it not necessarily a direct antiviral effect, but a reversal of HIV/AIDS wasting, for example, with Moringa. And there are...
That's actually really interesting, because it sounds to me like the Moringa might also be acting on a nutritional pathway as well.
Yes, I think so. And it needs a lot more attention. But there are direct antiviral effects of one of the main phytochemical components of Moringa. And this is an area, if you want me to blabber on about it for another minute, I'll tell you. Yeah, but this is an area where I personally sort of go to the parallels between the research that's been done on broccoli and sulforaphane that I've spent certainly the last part of my career working on, and glucomoringin or moringin, which is the very comparable acting isothiocyanate that's found in Moringa. And so the parallels between the modes of action and the targets in those two compounds is not surprising to any scientist, but is striking. And in fact, for a number of indications, the Moringa compound is actually more potent than the compound from broccoli. So there is some direct evidence that there's a direct antiviral effect of Moringa from Moringa, but there are not good clinical studies on that, whereas there are some with the broccoli compounds. So I don't think you'd get any clinician to put a patient, for example, on Moringa as a sole therapy. Mm-hmm. But as an adjunct, it may. I think it's going to start gaining some traction, or I hope it does, because these are real effects, and I think they're going to be major benefits
and very low risk.
Extremely low risk, and I keep going back to not rich Westerners and by comparison to the rest of the world, I'm saying, where you probably, most of your audience here probably can afford, or their insurance can probably afford, certain medications for conditions like diabetes, HIV. Maybe I'm not aware that there are any medications for lactation enhancement, but that's not my specialty. But in the rest of the world, where Moringa is widely available, I mean, I think it's hugely important that some of these indications be taken very seriously, because we're talking about a lot of places where people can't afford modern medicines and could benefit, as they have been for centuries, from traditional medicines. But it would sure help to be able to cut through the list of 300 indications and bring it down to 30 or 40, and to point people to Moringa instead of clover or bent grass or something else. And I'm pulling those examples out of the sky, of course, but so I think there's a lot of potential in some of these indications. And I realize I've gone astray from what you asked originally, but
no, it's okay.
You asked what should a clinician or a nutritionist think about with Moringa, or what should they tell their patients, right?
Yeah, because the clinicians could potentially be utilizing this, but as always in medicine, what happens is often the patients come in with the more cutting edge stuff and ask the clinician about it.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And one of the things I'm thinking about, particularly when we're thinking about people with limited resources, is it something that we should be thinking about in terms of helping people being able to grow this for themselves?
Lisa, that's yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people should grow Moringa. I will say it doesn't grow super well in the tropics. It really does prefer like a hot climate, hot, dry climate.
The temperate zone.
Yeah, exactly. And so, frost will kill it. So depending on where you are, it might work out great, might not. We know lots of folks in like Florida and Hawaii that grow Moringa, no problem. I would say here in Northern California, I've killed many a Moringa plant. But it is, that is a great way to do it. And I think also a great way to do it is, we do sell really small little packets of Moringa for $2, and you get a full 10 grams. So you can just get a packet and like try it in your diet for a week, and add just a little bit to whatever you're eating, and see if it works for you.
Without a lot of investment. Yeah, that's really
without
helpful.
A lot of investment. We're very cognizant of that, and part of our mission is to really make superfoods like Moringa accessible and delicious, both in the communities we source from and in the communities we sell to.
So I actually have three points to add to what you said, Lisa. One is that I get asked all the time, since I'm sort of known for sprouting or sprouts, I get asked all the time, well, can't we grow Moringa sprouts? And the short answer to that is no, almost completely, absolutely no, because the seeds are huge, actually, compared to a lot of other seeds. I mean, they're like the size of, a pea or bigger, really. They're bigger, actually. So they're very large, and they don't germinate quickly. and they're susceptible to mold, and they don't like a lot of water. So you can't sprout them. The second thing is in the predominantly temperate zones in the U.S. anyway, they don't store, the fresh leaves don't store well. So you might ask, well, Lisa, why don't you just sell fresh leaves? Well, when you refrigerate moringa leaves, they actually get moldy faster than I could ever believe. I mean, we couldn't even get samples shipped from Mexico, fresh samples shipped from Mexico without having, in a cold pack without having them get moldy. So you can buy frozen leaves or seed pods in some like West Indian supermarkets and other places, but it's logistically that's a real pain. So the dried leaves are I think certainly better. And the third thing is just quickly is I tried to put together a project actually growing moringa in greenhouses, hothouses in Serbia after the war there, where they were looking for sources of green vegetables for political reasons that never got off the ground. But we've grown it in greenhouses in the U.S. In many places. So I mean, I think in a house, even a house in Maine where I am, you could grow moringa in pots, but the production of leaves isn't all that rapid when you grow them out of the tropics. So if you're a pot grower, if you have grow lights and you're growing cannabis, probably they do really well in a grow room for cannabis, but not that many, not all of us, including myself, not all of us do that. But that's actually a place where it'd be a good intercrop, right, Lisa? Or a good grown side by side. Not an
industry
cannabis.
I plan, but I'm sure it would be.
Right. Yeah.
Although I will say, just a side note, when we were first starting out, we made moringa bars by hand in a commercial kitchen and sold them at a farmer's market in Oakland. And literally half the people came up to us and sort of whispered, "Hey, so there's weed in this, right?" No, there's different magical plant, guys. Different magical plant.
I love it.
Oh, that's good. So I have fond memories of moringa and eating it in an applesauce in Jed's lab when I was in grad school. I'm not sure that's the best way to eat it, though. So for my last question, I want each of you to let us know, what is your favorite way to eat moringa?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I only get one. Okay. I'll try to keep this short. But
okay, you can have more than one.
I can have more than one. So, see, our customers at Kuli Kuli mostly use it in smoothies. I'm going to be the first to admit I am not a smoothie person. I just like warm things in the morning. Even when it's hot out, I like something warm. And so I mix moringa into my oatmeal with flax seeds and chia seeds and some cacao nibs and a little bit of peanut butter or almond butter and cinnamon. I find the cinnamon and having a nut butter really complements the kind of earthier flavor of moringa. And that is my fuel for the day. It does so many great things for me. And then the other thing that I do a lot with moringa, and I also really like doing this, Kuli Kuli has some superfood blends that I do it with, is making a caffeine-free afternoon latte. I'm pretty caffeine sensitive. And so I find that at 3 o'clock when I'm just kind of slogging through my email, needing a little something that doesn't have caffeine in it. Moringa doesn't have caffeine, but it does have a lot of these benefits that Jed alluded to that makes your body feel more energized. So I will make a little moringa latte, hot or cold, in the late afternoons.
Well, that sounds pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have mutually exclusive lists, Lisa. So I guess I've got, say, five, maybe six go-tos. One is on pizza.
That sounds good.
Yeah. It's just obviously sprinkling the powder, but so it goes with many different pizza. cold or hot brewed tea. I've actually published a scientific paper on cold brewing, sort of making a sun tea with moringa versus hot brewing. And I won't go into details, but we can link your listeners to that paper if you want. I love Kuli Kuli's chocolate bars. I mean, the chocolate flavored energy bars, and that's cheating because I don't make them. They do. And then mixing it with peanut butter or almond butter in sort of balls that I put in the and really with whatever else is in the refrigerator, mix them in balls and freeze them on a tray and put them in the freezer for homemade energy bars. And then the last is mixing them with Ticino ashwagandha. So you may not be familiar with Ticino. I don't think all that many people are, but it's a fantastic probiotic, prebiotic, I should say. With chicory and dandelion root primarily, and in particular the one with ashwagandha lends itself to mixing with moringa. But that's a product that I have no affiliation with, and I buy it on Amazon. Actually, it's like a coffee or tea substitute, not caffeine.
Also good for the people who aren't caffeine or who are caffeine sensitive.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that is a great place, I think, for us to stop. Everyone can run out now and start putting those recipes together. So thank you so much for joining us. This was a really lovely conversation, and I hope very educational for our listeners.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Lee.
This is the GW Integrative Medicine podcast from the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health. I'm Dr. Lee Frame. Thanks for listening. The Office of Integrative Medicine and Health produces the GW Integrative Medicine podcast with funds from your donations. Your generosity allows us to raise awareness of the benefits of integrating whole person care, including evidence-based complementary therapies, into healthcare broadly. Help us continue to grow the podcast by making a tax-deductible donation on our website, smhs.gwu.edu/OIMH. Click the Give Now button on the left. While you're there, sign up for our free monthly newsletter for even more evidence-based content, including free webinars.